Okay, so when you think of the Buddha, you probably think of Prince Siddhartha, right? Sheltered in a palace. But what if I told you that's kind of just the last chapter? The real story, his epic origin story, doesn't start in a palace at all. It starts at the dawn of a new world. Let's get into it.
And this isn't some new age take. This whole epic tale comes straight from an ancient text, the Sutra of the Great King of Universal Consent. And get this, it's the Buddha himself telling the story, explaining his own cosmic origins.
Right, so we know about the prince, but the real question, the one that kicks this whole thing off, is way bigger. Where did he really come from? Not just him, but his family, his kingdom, even human society as we know it. Trust me, the answer is way more mind-blowing than you're probably expecting. And you know what's cool? This whole story actually begins with his own disciples asking him that exact question. They're in the city of Kapilavastu, and they're like, hey, world-honored one, where were you born? What's your family? What are the causes and conditions that led to you? Basically, they wanted the full, unedited origin story. And boy, did he deliver. So the Buddha starts to answer, but he doesn't begin with his dad or his grandpa. Nope. He goes way, way back, all the way to the very dawn of our current world cycle, right after the last one was destroyed. And the story starts with these beings who weren't really human, not as we'd recognize them anyway. Okay, so the first part of this epic tale is what we can call the Great Decline. It's basically a story of how paradise was lost. But it wasn't because of some huge dramatic sin. It was lost because of a single taste. So picture this. In the beginning, these beings are reborn into this fresh new world straight from a higher heaven. And they are incredible. I mean, they had these luminous bodies that literally glowed. They could fly. There was no sun or moon because they lit up everything. But as you can see here, that paradise didn't last. They fell from that state of, effortless grace and ended up in the heavy physical world we're all familiar with. So what happened? How did they lose all that? Well, the thing that kicked off this whole decline was something called earth flavor. Just try to imagine it, a delicious, super fragrant, sweet stuff that just appeared on the surface of the new world, kind of like a cosmic dew or something. And all it took was one being to taste it. Then another followed, and bam! With that first little taste came the very first feeling of attachment, of desire. And as their craving grew, as they got greedier, their inner light just faded away. Their bodies got heavy, they couldn't fly anymore. And for the very first time, the world went dark. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the food itself seemed to react to their greed. The more they craved, the more the world changed. First, that magical, spontaneous earth flavor, poof, gone. It was replaced by something called earth cakes, not quite as good. They got greedy for that, and it vanished too. Then came forest finds, same story. Finally, a fragrant rice started growing all by itself. But you see the pattern, right? This was a huge step down. For the first time, food had to be gathered. The free ride was over. And this whole downward spiral leads directly to the creation of things we just completely take for granted today. Things like society, private property, and the need for a ruler to stop everything from just falling into chaos. I mean, you can just see the dominoes fall, right? People started hoarding that rice instead of just taking what they needed for the day. That, of course, creates scarcity. Scarcity leads to the very first act of stealing. And what does stealing lead to? Fights, arguments, violence. Suddenly, these beings realized, whoa, we have a problem here, a big one. And they couldn't solve it on their own. They needed some kind of order. So, what do? They all get together and elect the most decent, virtuous person among them to be a ruler, basically a judge. They gave him the name Mahasamata, which means the great elect or king of universal consent. Pretty cool, huh? It's because literally everyone agreed he should be in charge. And there you have it. The very first king, chosen by the people to solve the problems created by their own greed. And here it is. This is the key. This very first king, who came to be because of humanity's first big crisis, he was the direct ancestor of Prince Siddhartha. And the line of kings that followed him, it is so mind-bogglingly vast, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
I mean, the sutra just starts rattling off the generations to give you a sense of this insane timeline. First up, one branch of this royal family had 54,000 kings who ruled from the city of Ayodhya. 54,000!
Then you've got another branch, a different city, Varanasi. How many kings there? 60,000. We're talking about numbers that are just staggering. And then you see this number pop up again and again, a symbolic number in Buddhism, 84,000. 84,000 kings who ruled from cities like Kampilia and Mithila over eons of time. So, what's the big takeaway here? The Buddha's royal line wasn't just ancient, it was foundational. It literally stretches all the way back to the dawn of human society, law, and order. It was born from the very first attempt to deal with the suffering that came from our own desires. And that brings us full circle, right back to the prince we started with. After this just unimaginably long line of rulers, the final heir to that ancient throne was finally born. Yep, Prince Siddhartha. He was the culmination of this entire epic lineage, a line started way back at the beginning of time to deal with human conflict. And just like all those ancestors before him, he too would have to face the problem of suffering, but for him, it was going to get a lot more personal. You see, he'd been sheltered his whole life, completely protected inside his palace. But on his first trip out, he saw an old man, all frail and wrinkled. And he was just stunned to find out that, yeah, that happens to everyone. Then, on his next trip out, he saw a sick person, someone just completely ravaged by disease. And he started to get it, the fragility of the body, the fundamental insecurity of just being alive. And then came the big one. He saw a dead body being carried off for cremation, and it hit him, the final, unavoidable reality of death. The problem of suffering wasn't just some story from the past anymore. It was real, and it was right in front of him. But on his fourth trip, he saw something else, something different, a calm, peaceful ascetic, someone who had given up the worldly life to find a solution to all this. And in that moment, Siddhartha saw a path forward. He saw hope. So let's bring this all home. The Buddha's entire lineage started with a king who was chosen to solve the social problem of greed. And then, after countless eons, the Buddha, the very last prince of that line, comes along and provides the spiritual solution to that exact same root problem. You see, he wasn't just some random prince who got enlightened. This origin story frames him as the ultimate answer to humanity's oldest problem. And it leaves you with a pretty deep thought, right? What does it truly mean for a solution to be born from the very problem it's meant to solve?